Hello, I'm Mark Hamblin from naturettl.com, and today we're on the hunt for mountain hares in this fantastic snowy landscape. In winter, mountain hares turn white, which gives them fantastic camouflage in this snowy environment you can see behind me. We've only come a short distance from the car park, but already we've seen clear signs of mountain hare activity. There's a lot of footprints in the snow that you can see here, and this is evidence of a good population of hares in these hills. Mountain hares are nocturnal animals. They spend most of the day resting in a little snow hole or perhaps in amongst some rocks, which keeps them very well camouflaged with their white coat from predators such as golden eagles. But at night time the hares will become active. They start to move away from their resting areas to feed on little bits of heather and other vegetation, and that's why we've got footprints down here. The hares will have come down from the higher hills looking for better grazing on these lower slopes. Heading up into the hilltops, it seems I'm not the only one on the lookout for hares. My progress up to the hares was slow, as opportunities for photos just kept cropping up. Big herd of red deer up ahead of us, so just going to try and get a few shots of these animals. They're very wary this time of the year, but it'd be nice to try and get some group shots. So I've got the 100 to 400 zoom set up here, which will give me a bit of scope in terms of composition. Eventually I made it up to the summit, although walking in the high snowdrifts really did present its own challenges. But the reason I've come up onto this high plateau is this is a really favoured area for mountain hares. The density of hares here is much higher than it is on the lower ground, so hopefully that's going to give me far better opportunities for photography today. Now the area I'm most interested in is this hillside across to my left here, which I know from past experience is a favoured habitat for the hares. And normally I'd expect to see maybe 10 or 15 individuals in quite a confined area. So that's going to give me plenty of chances, and also the possibility of some interaction between the hares. Here we've got hares all over this hillside. There must be 20 plus probably. But there's a nice little group of perhaps 5 individuals about 100 metres away. And those are the animals that I'm going to try for first. There's so many hares around today, I'm a bit spoilt for choice to be honest, but the great thing about that is there's plenty to choose from, and I've managed to find a hare here in a really nice position. Some nice clean snow around it, so it's going to make a great photograph. At the moment though, the hare isn't doing a great deal, which is fairly normal to be quite honest. During the daylight hours they're fairly inactive, but I know sooner or later that hare's going to do something. It might get up and have a stretch or a yawn, might do a bit of grooming. So really it's very much a waiting game. I've got myself into a good position here. I'm just going to sit it out and wait for the hare to do something, and then hopefully I'm going to get the shots that I'm after. Mountain hare photography inevitably involves a lot of waiting around, often kneeling, sometimes lying in the snow, so it's a cold business, and it's quite windy today as well, so the wind chill factor is substantial. And even with gloves, hat and all the big coats on, it's still very easy to get cold and chilled and even hypothermic, so it's quite a serious business being out in these environments during the winter time, so you certainly need to have the right gear on. One thing to bear in mind when photographing in these snowy conditions is exposure, because if you leave your camera on AV, aperture priority mode, without any compensation, the pictures will come out too dark, they'll be underexposed. So to try to combat that, then there are two ways to do that really. Either continue shooting in AV mode but dial in around about +2 stops of exposure compensation, and you can do that using the exposure compensation dial, which is usually on the back of the camera on most models. The way I prefer to do the exposure is to shoot in manual mode. I just feel that gives me more control. So it's a very similar technique. I'll set the aperture that I want to use, point the camera at the snow, and then adjust the indicator until it lines up with +2. Depending on the conditions and the light on the day, there are countless styles and different types of photos that can be captured. This was an image that I perhaps considered to be my first shot of a mountain hare that I was really pleased with, and it shows the hare running across a large expanse of snow with the spindrift there really nicely illuminated by the late afternoon light. Another shot here of the hare, quite small in the frame and taken from a distance actually with a 500mm lens, and the hare had just woken up and got its front paws there outstretched in front of it, and the composition lent itself very nicely with the little wispy grasses there running diagonally across the frame. Boxing behaviour is something I've seen quite a few times, but very often it's too far away from the camera to get a reasonable picture. But here I was dead lucky. The action happened right in front of me, and I was in a perfect position to shoot a long sequence of hares, maybe 50 or more pictures. The light's starting to fade a bit now, but we've had a fantastic day in the hills here photographing mountain hares, and hopefully got some really nice shots. So I hope you've enjoyed watching and learnt a little bit from the tips and techniques that I've been talking about. And don't forget to subscribe to the Nature TTL channel, and also tune in for new videos every week.